This is the magicwordpodcast.com.
Hello, this is Scott Wells for the magicwordpodcast.com. This week's episode is brought to you by the Friends of the Magic Word. Those are the ones whose financial support help keep this podcast going week after week. The two new people that we'd like to welcome, first of all, James Fow, who has made a donation through PayPal. Thank you, James, very much, and welcome to the group. And also to Ian Richards, who has pledged through Patreon his monthly support then for this podcast, too. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for putting your money where your ears are. It's because of those people like you who will, again, keep this podcast going, hopefully many years into the future, particularly after I just had my little heart surgery there last week. I mentioned this on the podcast last week, and also I put it in the pod letter. But basically, it was a fairly routine procedure, I guess, because I was released from the recovery room almost immediately after I had come to and woken up there. And they said, you can send for someone to come and pick you up. You're ready to go. So sent home, and I stayed with another friend of the Magic Word and one of my good friends, Dick Olson. And I stayed in his home for a while and just recuperated while the doctor had told me again not to do much of anything and not to lift anything more than a gallon of milk and just relax. So did a lot of TV watching and just relaxed, and was not able to drive a car until just recently. So finally came back to my new house here in Georgetown, which is north of Austin. And after I got back, was able to have lunch, visited with Charles Green III, who happened to be in town visiting from Washington, D.C. He's doing some research at the Ransom Center, which I had a podcast episode some time ago, not only with Charles Green, but also with Eric Colleary, who is the curator of the Ransom Center. I'm kind of getting off on a little subtopic here, but I just let you know kind of what I've been up to let you know that I'm out and about and getting around, and that my breath is a little bit, it's hard to catch my breath. I can't walk too far right now. It'll just take a while for me to kind of get back to where I was. But hopefully by the 1st of December, everything will be back to normal. It seems that, again, the surgery was successful. And I do want to thank each and every one of you who had, through the social media on Facebook, or where you had texted me, or you had sent emails or called or whatever. It just meant so much. It really lifted my spirits to know there are so many people out there who really care about me, and it means a lot. Thank you very much. And it truly from the bottom, literally, of my heart. It meant a lot and continues to mean a lot. So thank you for keeping me in your thoughts and prayers. It's been wonderful. Well, I mentioned Charles Green. He is a trade show magician, then also who I've known, since the early 1980s, I guess, or so. We've been good friends and worked together in restaurants. But anyhow, he has been a trade show magician for a long time. And Charles wouldn't be where he is if it wasn't for the people like my guest this week, and that is Dick Stoner. Dick is one of those pioneers of the trade show upon whose shoulders we stand. We really need to have these kinds of people, I think, to hear their stories, so we can certainly appreciate where we're going by knowing where we have been and how this all got started. Dick is a nonagenarian at the age of 93, and he still, believe it or not, operates, along with his son Kevin, the Stoners Funstore in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And he still keeps busy, although he's not doing any trade shows. He says he's not quite so stable on his feet or whatever. But while I was at Abbott's get-together in Colon, Michigan this past summer, I had an opportunity to sit down with him. I was wanting to do it last year when I was there, but he is kind of in and out, and because of his stability and some other physical problems, we were unable to get together last year, but we did this year, and I'm so thankful that we did, and I think you're going to enjoy him talking about trade shows as well as his fun store. So please help welcome my guest this week, Mr. Dick Stoner, here on The Magic Word. Today I have a very special guest with me, and someone that I have spoken with a time or two in the past whenever I have been in Colon, Michigan at Abbott's Get Together, and he has been a regular attendee for a long number of years, and actually someone who is very important to the magic community and has influenced so many people in so many ways. Has been a longtime trade show magician, one of the pioneers in trade shows, and maybe we can get some stories out of him then as well. Of course, then he also has his magic shop, which is Stoners Funstore in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Please welcome my guest today, Dick Stoner. Hi there, Dick. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be here.
I'm so glad to have you. This is great. I have so many things I want to ask you about. I know there are not a lot of brick-and-mortar magic shops that are still around today, but that used to be quite the thing many years ago. So I'm curious how you got started with that.
Well, I started out as a 13-year-old. My father did a little magic as a hobby, and I got to doing it. And when I was ready to graduate from high school, he said, "What college are you going to?" I said, "I want to be a magician." And so he explored, and we opened up a magic shop. Percy Abbott came from Abbott's and said they were selling in their Indianapolis store, and if we wanted to buy the store, they would give us the fixtures and everything. And so we did, and that started the whole thing.
Right, and that was in Fort Wayne, Indiana, I'm trying to say.
Yes.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Right. What year would that have been approximately?
I've been in 49. So.
1949?
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. And was it always called Stoner's Fun Shop then from the beginning?
It was in a one room of a section of three building of three buildings together, but we were in one of the buildings. Mm-hmm. And shortly after that, the business got better, and I bought the buildings and expanded into two of the other buildings. So we ended up with actually four buildings mm-hmm. tied together, and had filled that with costumes. The costumes are all sorts of costumes. We have fit about any occasion, rent them for schools, plays, and everything.
Right. Have you been in the same building or?
Same building.
Okay. Okay.
All that time.
That's just expanded. I know the Halloween business has changed a lot. Did you have your own seamstresses and people who made your own costumes?
We have some seamstresses make some costumes, and we buy costumes, and we bought one inventory from people that had a costume inventory and sold it to us. And mm-hmm. The first year we rented more than we paid for the costumes.
Wow!
So we were very happy with that.
That's the way it's supposed to work. That's the business model. Mm-hmm. That's the way it should work. And so at the peak, how many employees did you have?
We usually had about 5 people.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And my wife runs the costume end of it. And my son, Kevin, is a kind of a store manager. And then we have 4 or 5 other people that mm-hmm. participate too.
Aside from Halloween, there are other times, I guess, like Renaissance festivals and things like that, or maybe weddings or costume parties.
Everything you can think of.
All year round. Mm-hmm. What's been some of the most unusual things people have asked for?
Well, my wife's more familiar with all of that than I am, but we've had things that were military ideas or mm-hmm. back in history, and old-time costumes that would fit that particular thing they're doing. And if it's
right.
a play about something, then we find the costumes that fit that.
Of that era. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow, that's kind of interesting. And so when you say you find the costumes, do you, you didn't have the internet before, but now with this, I guess it's a little bit easier to find.
Yeah, we would, some of them we have catalogs we can order from.
Sure.
But we also produce a lot of the costumes ourselves too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
have you had a lot of competition then with those pop-up Halloween stores? That
somewhat, but not a terrible business. And during the year, we have the inventory to do whatever they would have that only there for a week or two, and
mm-hmm.
then they're gone.
And yours is year-round, of course.
Yes, right.
Yeah, right. So they can trust you, obviously.
Right.
And so, that's sure during the month of October is a very busy.
Right.
Do you attend?
And then Christmas is big. have a number of Santa suits that go out and elves and all that sort of thing for Christmas parties.
Yeah, right. Do you go to those Halloween costume trade shows and things like that?
Not too much. We have sometimes put costumes in there, but basically in the trade shows where I participated, I would do a magic show and with a microphone and stop a crowd as they walk by and they wonder what's going on and they come over and you build a crowd and
Sure.
then you incorporate their product into your message or your tricks you're doing and
Right.
and it gets them people interested in finding out about that product.
Right, right. I want to get into that, but staying on the magic shop for just a minute, do you also build things, or is it just, or do you just buy some magic props, or do you have?
We had some things built for ourselves, and then I have some different printed things that we use. I have a trade show where I was in a town in New York, out in the outstate New York, and there was a little store there, and they had some novelty things, and I picked up a little sheet of paper, and it had pictures on it, and you'd fold it down, and it looked like a little paper, and you'd unfold it and say, and it would open up, and it would be a picture of a casket. And the whole casket, and you say we can have this funeral arrangement for you for $50,000, and they say, well, that's more than I could spend. You fold the back down and say, we'll eliminate the top. We had a canopy. We now just have the drapes and the casket, and then well, that's more than I can spend. And you fold it down again, and you keep folding it down. And the last fold, you end up with a garbage can.
Oh, garbage can. Okay.
And you say, and I when I do it, and when I did it in shows, I'd say, and if you end up like this, you end up with this. You see one of these garbage cans, you're walking down the street. Don't kick it. I might be in it.
Oh. That's funny. And then you would pass out the paper, and then they could tell their friends that joke, then too. Well, years ago, I guess you probably worked with Eddie Tullock and Bud Dietrich and all those guys.
Yeah, Eddie Tullock I saw a lot at trade shows, and Eddie was one of the people that could work a trade show in a big facility without a microphone. He just really loud, and he could do that without a microphone. And but he was quite a sensation in the trade show industry. And then I did a lot of corporate meetings where I would do a show for entertainment for a company event, and just my normal act of comedy and magic. And I found out early on that I wanted to add comedy to my magic, and so everything I did had humor in it, and involved in it, and it made it more interesting to people.
Was that in the context of the trade show, or a hospitality suite, or after dinner?
Either one. The hospitality suites, you do close-up magic and so on. And the trade show, you do things that would build some traffic and then tie in with one of their products. And then just the banquet shows, I would just do my comedy act, much like a show you saw here tonight. Right. It would be that sort of thing, where it was just entertainment. Right.
Right. Do you remember any particular location? Now, back then, I assume just the United States. You toured just the States, or did you go?
Yeah, most of was in major cities like, in Chicago and New York and Atlanta, the West Coast, and
Las Vegas.
Yeah, Vegas, and wherever they had crowd and shows for conventions, and that's where we did it.
Was there a place that you remember that stood out in your mind that you liked better, or you'd love to go back and do a show there?
Oh, I enjoyed Las Vegas, and then also Chicago, the bigger cities.
Like McCormick Place.
It just had a lot of people, and that's what was creating the interest.
Mm-hmm. What was one of your signature tricks that you did?
Well, I did a trick with the rope, or a cut and restored rope, and I cut it, and it's back together, and then it's apart again, and then it's back together. And then I did things with cards where I'd find their card in an unusual manner, and do a thing with a scarf and produce scarves, and some of the scarves would be ads for their company and that sort of thing.
Right. Do you remember a particular company that was one of your long-term?
I did a lot of work for some of the corporations. Let's see, Las Vegas was a company in Las Vegas, and it was. It's been a while since I've done the trade shows. I'm trying to think of the names. There was a company that made engineering products, and I would talk about that, and I'd do things about engineering products, and then things that would be of interest to people.
Sure. I remember that Bud Dietrich would do like the linking rings, and he did a few close-up tricks, as did Mike Rogers and some other people like that.
I did linking rings a lot.
Okay. It gets attention, doesn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's something that you can do. You have to be able to do something right close in front of people, and that's what makes it strong and makes it effective.
And then try to make certain things represent something that would tie it back to the company.
Right.
Yeah. How did you study the companies? I mean, how did you learn about...
Well, they would give me information about their company, and then whatever. If it was selling products like building equipment, why you would work some magic with some products. Some of their products.
Of course.
And incorporate that.
And I assume, obviously, you'd work for some companies throughout the year, doing the same company over and over.
There were a number of companies I would work. Belden, one company that built wire and cable things. I did trade shows for a number of years for them, a number of shows each year, and became kind of known for their product and everything. And
then, so they kept bringing you back year after year.
Pardon?
Yeah, all the time. Were there conflicts in which you couldn't work for them because there was another company?
Yeah, usually a lot of people wouldn't want you to do the same kind of product. They don't care if you're in a different industry, but as long as you don't have this same competing product.
Right, right. So in other words, if you're working in avionics, you can go work in pharmaceuticals. Yeah. Was there a product that took you longer to learn? I mean, it would seem to me hard, for an example, like for pharmaceuticals, to pronounce the names of some drugs.
They'll give you some information you have to have, and then you practice that and work on that and incorporate it into the magic. And
right.
That's.
And I always found that was the most fun, is the challenge for that. How can you work magic into the product rather than the product into the magic?
Right. Yeah. You got to make the product interesting and get their interest in it and keep that in their mind.
Right. Right.
A lot of the things that I would do in magic, you get their product and you can usually incorporate that into it and in a different way, but the same product. In doing the magic.
Yeah, sometimes I guess they'd provide with playing cards, for an example, or something that you could use.
Right. Yeah, you do things, and when you say, now even though it seems impossible, this is what happens, and this is what can happen if you have this product.
Yeah. Right. I was mentioning Bud Dietrich earlier and Eddie Tullock, and what do you remember also then about, say, Mike Rogers?
Mike Rogers was a great trade show person too, and he did a lot of fun things with his product and magic. He had a sense of humor and incorporated that, and that helped to make the people pull in the crowd.
Pull in the crowd.
And then he finished up with the serious part of the problem.
Do you remember anything in particular that he did that stood out?
He did a 6-card repeat where he would have 6 cards, throw 3 away, still have 6 cards, throw 3 away, and then it would show in the product and how their product is always there and help you.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense, certainly. You were talking about Eddie Tullock about how loud that he was, and so he really didn't need a microphone. I know in some cases there are trade shows that don't want you to use much amplification because if it's too loud, they complain, and so. Did you ever have any issue with that?
Sometimes there was, but if you were using a microphone, usually you control it so it's not too, not the whole building. It's just in this area, and Eddie, of course, could do it just without the microphone.
Right, and then also, I guess there were times in which you would have a company that would come over to your booth and say, "Hey, can you come and work us?" But you already had a client.
I could work for another company as long as it wasn't the same kind of industry.
Yeah, we were just talking about. But that's what I wondered if you could.
Yeah, you just if you had a company that was using you, they used you normally in the series, why you probably wouldn't do the same trade show for anybody else for maybe a number of years because. Yeah.
Well, Carol Fox was another one. Did you work with him from time to time too?
Who?
Carol Fox.
Oh yeah, Carol Fox. Yeah, Carol did some trade shows, and he did a lot of things automotive. A lot of automotive things.
Because he was in Detroit, wasn't he? I think he was from Detroit, Michigan area.
Yeah,
so
right, Detroit
Car
area.
City up there. Kind of made some sense. Yeah. Who were some others that you had seen or worked with that were on the trade show circuit?
Oh, there was a number of guys that. It's been a while since I've done any of the trade shows. I can't think of the names, but Johnny Thompson and a number of different people that did trade shows.
There was a guy in Las Vegas. Did you know Dick Ryan?
The Baron.
The Baron? Dick Ryan. Because Dick Ryan was in Las Vegas, right? From what I understand, that Dick Ryan actually started, I guess, in Fort Wayne. And so, I didn't know if you had worked with him or knew much, about him then either. But, Dick Ryan was someone else I had.
I did a lot of things for Eckrich Meats in Fort Wayne. There was a lot of products in that. Be a show for people that prepared food and people who use products like that.
Right. Was there one particular industry that you liked better than the other?
Oh, I didn't have too much problem with any of them. I mean, it was just a matter of getting familiar with what they wanted, and then you'd incorporate this same thing.
Always looking for the next one, I guess. Did you know Walter Blaney?
Zany Blaney.
Yep.
Zany Blaney, yeah, he was a good. He did trade shows, but he did other things too. He did a stand-up show for an audience, which I also did.
Right. Yeah, he did a lot of corporate shows that as well. But I know he had Showstoppers, I think was the name of his trade show company that he was, booking things around then too.
Yeah.
I assume there were times in which there were other magicians working the same show.
Oh yeah, there would be show would be Eddie Tullock there and. From Chicago. He just died recently. Let's see, what's his name? But he was out of Chicago, and he did magic and also a ventriloquist act with his puppet Lefty.
Jay Marshall?
Yes, Jay Marshall.
Of course.
Right. Yeah, Jay was a great friend, and he was involved in trade shows too.
You and Jay probably go way back. You probably met him a long time ago.
Yeah.
When did you first meet Jay?
Well, a number of years ago, my wife had a birthday party for me at our Coliseum in Fort Wayne, and she invited some people, and a couple of people from Chicago came down, and they brought Jay with them. And when they came in, we're in the Coliseum. We're in one room in the Coliseum, and they have the sporting events there too, in the other part of the Coliseum. And they brought Jay down. And they pulled into the parking lot, and Jay says, "God, Stoner must have an awful lot of friends."
Jay had quite a sense of humor.
Yeah.
Quite a sense of humor. Now, he had a magic shop, of course, Magic Inc., and he was not in competition with you because back then, I guess you had a mail-order catalog, probably just like he did. And did you do a lot of business through mail order back a long time ago? I mean, the way that Abbott's has, or was that a big part of your business plan, the mail order?
Mail order? Oh, in our store, we did a lot of mail order that was, we had a website, and I did a lot of magic tricks that we would advertise, and I would do the trick on videotape.
Oh.
And they could play it and
learn.
And then they'd see the product on a list here, and they'd click that, and it would come up, and I would be presenting the product as you would do it.
Right.
And they'd see the use of that product for their advertising.
Right. Did you, in the early days of videotaping like that, did you also send or solicit clients that way of saying, look, here's what I could do with your product, and I could help sell?
Yeah, right. A lot of times we'd send a video to them, say this is the way I could do that.
Right, right.
And,
do a 3-card Monty or something that you could, sell them and have the product
right
on the card.
But most of the things you had to do that were going to be up and visual, so people could see it from a little distance.
Right. What tips would you have for people who are trade show workers?
Well, the main thing is you understand the product and find the way to tie that product into your presentation so that they see the need they can get and how they can solve that need, and that works well for them.
One of the hardest things I've talked with some people who don't like to do trade shows is because they have a little difficulty trying to stop the traffic.
Yeah, that's I found the way I used to compete with that was I did a lot of comedy with my magic. And so when you got people laughing, you got a group of people around you, and they're laughing, people come over to see what they're laughing about, and that pulls more people in.
Right.
So I did it with a lot of humor, and then brought the crowd in.
Right. So were you really telling more jokes, or were you doing some tricks that had jokes?
Well, sometimes it's funny lines, or sometimes it's just the trick itself is funny. I mean,
right.
You do a thing. I had a pair of glasses that I would have somebody select the card, and then I would have them put it back in the deck, and they shuffle the deck, and they put the deck down, and I would lean over and pick a pair of glasses. I would put them on, and I'd look. Your card was the 2 of spades, and they'd say no. And I'd say, what was your card? And it's on the glasses.
2 of spades are on the lens.
8 of hearts, and and it's just a surprise. It gets a laugh, and
yeah. Well, that's the thing, obviously, about magic is the surprise is something that causes people to laugh because, in spite of themselves, it's like, oh, it didn't get that coming.
And I found if you do magic and mental magic and stuff seriously, some people will get offended by it. They think it's and so when you make them laugh, it lightens it up, and it creates that crowd too.
That is a good point. There are people who still believe that magic is real, or that it's black magic or voodoo.
Some people believe magic is real.
Yeah.
But
did you ever have any problem with that, or somebody that came to you and said, "Oh, you're the devil"? I'm not
really.
Gonna...
No. I did. Because I did it in a fun, light way, and that helped.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes people don't even understand playing cards because it's against their religion at church or something.
Right. Yeah. But if you're doing a thing for a church, you probably wouldn't use a bunch of card tricks in that
context.
Maybe you do some other props that were more inviting to them.
That you kind of touched on a good point there. I think it's important to know your audience.
Right.
Same thing like with your audience at a trade show. What is it that they're looking for? How can you reach them? Is this an audience of engineers, or are these students from college who are trying to learn, or are they business people?
Well, when I started doing the magic, I got Eckrich Meats.
Yeah, Eckrich Farms.
Yeah. They contacted me, and they went me to Chicago to a trade show, and I did comedy magic, and I did a routine with hot dogs, and I would take one hot dog and put it in my hat, and I'd keep
multiplying hot dogs,
multiplying hot dogs, and that worked well for them, and it was very effective. And so, if you find the thing that appeals to the people, their audience, well, then you've got the thing that will work for their trade show.
I think sometimes if you just use something generic, and like the linking rings, I mean, you can say this represents quality and service and good products or whatever. people don't understand that unless there's something that is maybe written on it or something. I think it's hard to make a leap.
If you don't have it written, say you can take these two rings, rub them one against the other, and they link together, and you can link your product with others. And so you tie the linking rings, and linking rings are a very good visual thing. A lot of noise when you're doing it, and that again helps draw that crowd.
Right, because they're wondering what's going on over there.
Right.
Yeah, and it's like you say, it's up.
When I first went in, I was just. Like I said, a youngster. My dad, just out of high school, and I started doing the things, and then more and more things came, and I would find more reasons to do trade shows and different things. But I always still enjoyed being back in the store and having magic tricks to sell to people, that youngsters. And I at this get together. I've had about a half a dozen people come up to me and said, "When I was a youngster, you got me interested in magic, and I'm doing now shows, and it's kind of satisfying to say to people that
very much, I think,
and that it makes you feel good that you
put somebody on that path.
Yeah,
influence their life so significantly that they remember this is how they got started. With you. Do you find a particular trick that people like kids or new magicians would be good for them?
I started with kids lots of times with a trick called the Magic Coloring Book, and you flip through the pages of the coloring book, and it's got drawings of rabbits and different things, and then you have them reach in the air and throw colors at it, and then you flip through the book, and it's all colored. And you say, "Oh, you colored the whole book. I won't be able to do it for anyone else." You toss the colors back, and then you flip the book, and it's just totally blank.
Empty.
You say, "Oh, give me toss the colors, then the big thing," and now they got the thing back the way you started.
That's a very good point. I really hadn't thought about the simplicity of that particular trick for people who are just getting started, because anybody can do that very easily.
Yeah, it's very easy to do,
and it's magical.
A youngster can do it, but it's very effective, actually, too.
Yeah, I have used that in trade shows, in which I have had the name of the company or something, and then about how the company has grown from one size to another, and then internationally, but they got started, back in, Saginaw or something.
I started doing magic, and then more and more shows, and then I got into trade shows, and then I got into doing at trade shows. Somebody see me and come up and want to know if I'd want to work the Nashville Network. And they booked me on the Nashville Network, and I did
a television show. Nashville Network.
Yeah, I did. I probably did 30 some shows on the Nashville Network for over a period of time, and that brought product to me.
Trade shows to you, business to you.
It brought a lot of shows to me because they would see me on there in the Nashville Network. And they would call me up just for entertainment for their company and something. And so it got me way out of the area of the Fort Wayne, but into any. How
did that come about?
Pardon?
How did that come about to work for the Nashville Network?
Well, I did a show in California, and I was talking about incorporating a product, an electronic product, and a young man came over and watched my show, and he talked to me, and he was there with the trade show for broadcast Nashville Network, and he was with them, and he had a puppet.
Okay.
And he was
a ventriloquist figure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And he was dressed like a cowboy, and the puppet was too. And he came back with his boss and watched my show, and his boss gave me his card and said, "We'd like to have you come down. We got a new national TV show, the Nashville Network. We'd like to have you come down." I went home and talked to my wife and told her about it. And she, that's that new network that you ought to. So I called him and I said, I got a show in Atlanta, and I could stop off on the way back and do a sheer show. We'd love to have you. I did that, and then that brought a number of those shows. And this Shotgun Red with his puppet worked with me a lot, and it was a cute representation.
Back and forth. Well, I remember the network, and also Walter Blaney, I think, may have worked on that network, like with the Oak Ridge Boys or something. They had a show.
Did the Statler Brothers show.
Statler Brothers, that was who it was.
Statler Brothers show a number of times, and the the Nashville network had the country music people, and the interesting thing there is they enjoyed things with laughter, and so when I did my stuff and it was funny, and they got a big kick out of it, and it would just draw more and more people to it.
But you didn't end up moving to Nashville. You just went down there.
No, I'd go down there and do the show, but the show brought me immediately to audiences all over the country that listened to that show.
Well, it was kind of like, I guess, at the time, because there were so few networks and everything. I mean, when people, for an example, were on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, the next day they were stars,
Right.
And so I imagine similarly, as that network came about, people saw you because there wasn't a lot of other shows.
I did some other shows too, like the regular networks too. But the Nashville network, I did an awful lot of it, and that set me in that area.
Yeah. Were you surprised as to what kind of response you got and the kinds of additional shows? I mean, or was that kind of a business decision, thinking I'm going to do this with the intent of trying?
Well, when I do the show, it just, if it worked and they were getting laughs and everything, that helped them, and that they wanted it, and that did that, and the people then watching, they would say that'd be funny for us at our national meeting and this and that, and they'd do that, so they would do the show there with.
Right. Mm-hmm. And then, again, you were able to be seen by a national network, a national group of people, and companies, they were saying, hey, we just saw you last night. And they can advertise you that way then, too, as seen on TV.
Yes, yeah. Well, the Nashville Network brought me a lot of trade shows, too. I mean, because there are people watching and would see the use of it in product and stuff, and that worked.
Did you? That brings me to another question. I hadn't thought about that, but did you try to incorporate a theme or a message with that so people could see that you were?
Sometimes, but I didn't do too much on there. I just did it purely entertainment
straight
on
magic.
There because that's what they were hiring me for. And
I got you.
That's what I did, and then but people would see. This, and a lot of people in the advertising business for companies would realize that if somebody could entertain a crowd and make them laugh, that would bring people in for their trade show, and so they would figure that out themselves. And well,
sounds like that turned out to be successful for everybody. It's kind of a win-win situation. And did you work with other? You say there were other television stations, I guess, locally in Fort Wayne, and
locally and other stations. Yeah,
was it really kind of Don Wayne type stuff? I mean, chop cup routines and things, or a little bit of everything, or comedy that you did?
Yeah, it was all kinds of things that you incorporate with magic with, and we call our store the fun stores. And that whole thing of being fun, and that's what appeals to people, and that's what worked in the trade shows.
You mentioned Jay Marshall earlier, and I know he had a book about performing magic on TV. I think he and Francis maybe had put that out, and it's a different animal to work on TV because you have different cameras as to who you're working with, and you don't know necessarily unless you've told the camera operator or the director which camera to use to shoot, because they could have a bad angle on you or something.
Yeah.
So how did you learn?
Well, if you're used to doing magic, you will position yourself so the angles are right for them to do the thing, and that's
because I had learned when I was on television once the hard way, where I was entertaining the host. And this person was laughing, having a great time, but there was a camera on the two of us, but there was also one that was on my hands the whole time. And so as I was doing cups and balls, they never took the camera off of the loads. But the person was laughing because I had misdirected that person, and it was going great. So if you were listening to it, it was like two different shows, This one was the instructional view, which was the one that got out, apparently. And I thought, okay, now from now on I know better to actually talk with the director.
Well, I did magic when I went into the Army. The first day we got to the barracks, and I had a little pack of stuff that I carried with me to entertain the guys that some of them I knew were drafted with me.
Yeah.
And on the bus going there, and I got there, and it was up in Michigan, near here, really, Fort Custer, and so I did some shows for the guys coming back on the bus and everything. We got to barracks and got to bed, and all of a sudden somebody says, "Stoner reports the orderly room." And they had me go down, and there was some officers there, and they said, "We heard you were doing, do you have your magic here?" And I said, "No." "Well, can you bring it?" I said, "Well, I'll go get it." And I come down, and I had me till 3 o'clock in the morning doing card tricks for them. And
for the officers?
Yeah. And then they said, "Well, you're doing, could you, we're a processing area, people coming into the Army here and going out of the Army, and they're here just for a few days, and if you could entertain them, it would be good. Could you do that?" And I said, "Well, if I had my equipment here." So they said, "Okay, we'll give you a pass." And the one officer said, "I'm going through Fort Wayne, leaving tomorrow, going home, and I'll drop you off." So my mother thought I was AWOL.
What are you doing here? Yeah.
And I came back with my car and the magic, and they had me doing this it was a few months I was doing that, and all of a sudden the colonel of the post called me in, and I got this from headquarters that some private Stoner's been in the Army for so many weeks and so many days, and he hasn't had processing yet, and so he has to have a report for his basic training. Uh-huh. So they sent me for basic training, and as soon as I got there, the other officers there found out about it, and they would try to have me go to the hospital and do some things.
Sure.
And so out of that, I broke a leg one time. We were out building Bailey bridges, and I fell and broke my leg, and they put me in the hospital, and then they sent me home on leave, and I come back, and by this time they wanted me to know boomerang magic, and I brought my magic back, and so they started sending me all over. They sent me to Fort Churchill, Canada, and every place, and I would do the shows, and I ended up doing nothing but that for the years I was in the Army.
Wow.
Which was kind of fun to do.
It was, so they sent you around really. So what did you end up? Are you still first class? I mean, private first class? Or?
Yeah, I was a private first class, and but they gave me some opportunities that made it a little easier I didn't have to deal with a lot of the stuff in the Army.
Right. And did you have to actually go through basic training? I mean, it sounds like they kept being avoided, but did you finally go through the basic training?
No, I never did.
Never did. They kept putting you someplace and said, "Hey, if you do magic, come over to here. That's interesting."
No, they never did have me do the basic training, and it was. And by the time I got out of the hospital and they sent me home and back and forth a couple of times, I was having less time to be able to go and do the training and everything else. And
right. So how many years were you in the service?
That was 2 years.
Just 2 years.
And I had doing that. I ended up being seen in a lot of places, and so when I got out of the Army, some of the people remember me from the Army, and I still got shows.
Some shows from those from your Army buddies. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Now, was that during Korean War time?
Yes.
Okay.
It was. That was in there was.
1950s.
Yeah, the 50s. We had. They were coming home from Korea, and some guys, and some were going into then, mm-hmm. And so it worked out very good for the shows to be entertaining.
Were there other magicians that you met also, or were there USO shows that came through?
No, I didn't really meet any other magicians in the Army, uh-huh. But they sent me to New York. They singled some people out, and we went to New York City to do a contest. And they had singers and a dancer and this and that.
Variety show.
And I did magic, mm-hmm. And I ended up going to the Steve Allen show.
Oh, sure.
TV show, and did that as a Steve Allen show.
Steve Allen was before, I think it was Jack Parr, and then Steve Allen, and then Johnny Carson, wasn't that?
I don't remember exactly Steve Allen was pretty early on.
But he was before Johnny Carson.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But he had a very funny guy. Yeah.
Yeah. But...
and so you say you met him, or he was the MC, or...
he was the host of the show, and then
Yeah.
he would have you on as a guest and do it. And that's... And a lot of people said they enjoyed on the Steve Allen show, and so they, even when I got out of the Army, I could get calls because of that.
Because they remembered that, again, from your shows like that. And were they hiring you just to do magic, or at that time were they starting to do trade shows?
That was mostly just magic.
When did trade shows actually, rather, let me rephrase that. When did magicians really first start working trade shows?
Well, I'm in the 50s when I did a few. There was just getting started then. It's Eddie Tullock and different people were doing.
So they were the first.
That was when they started out. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And there's still people doing that today.
Oh, sure. Yeah, but I was curious about the earliest part of that. I imagine, like you said, Eddie Tullock and probably Carol Fox and some others, Johnny Thompson.
Yeah.
So you worked with Johnny. Did you know him pretty well?
Who?
Johnny Thompson, you said?
Yeah, Johnny Thompson. Yeah. He was fun to work with, and he worked a lot with Penn and Teller on helping them with their show and knowing what to do and how to put it together.
Right.
Johnny was he was a great fun guy. He came to Fort Wayne one time was to do some shows, but he stayed at our house a few days, and he had his wife and some animals with him that he used in the show.
Some animals. So he was doing a big show back then, actually.
Rabbits and birds and stuff.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, well, I guess, of course he's using birds, and everything. Okay, and I was thinking larger animals, like lions and tigers or something. He wasn't doing big illusions, I guess. Kind of like, because I know Paul Gertner does some larger illusions and stuff.
But he used just... a few little animals like that.
Right. Yeah. When did you stop doing trade shows and kind of...
Well, I didn't really stop trade shows necessarily. I do some trade shows and I do other shows and I did both things. I spent time videotaping some magic that we sold and putting that on TV, and then I would do trade shows if I got a trade show call, and then I would do... banquet shows, and when I did the TV shows, you got companies that would call me from a long distance, and I'd be going to New York or Chicago or whatever to do the trade show. Not the trade show, but the entertainment for their company party.
For their corporate show. So how old are you now?
I'm 93.
93, okay. And are you still practicing magic from time to time? You still do some things?
I do some. I'm a little unstable. I can't stand up for 45 minutes or an hour to do a show. I do some close-up magic and do a few things, but I'm not doing a lot anymore.
You go into the shop regularly?
I go in the shop usually on Saturdays, and people that want to buy magic come in that day. And then other times, if my wife hears about somebody and they want to know, then she'll bring me down for another day and help them get magic.
What kind of advice do you give young people when they want to learn magic, or someone who's not necessarily young people, but someone who's even an adult who's just wanting to get started?
Well, I start with something simple that they can do easily.
Like the coloring book, you said.
Like the coloring book, that kind of thing. And then other things that are pretty easy. And then some of the kids really get interested, and some of them are just passing fancy.
Yeah.
But some do get real interested. And I've had... at this convention, I had about 6 different people came up to me and say, "I want to thank you for getting me started in magic, and you first spring that got me interested in magic, and I've been I'm doing shows in Chicago, and we had a number of people come up and say that, and it was kind of satisfying to, and that they felt that I was the cause for them being able to
Absolutely.
To do that.
Right.
And I had a number of people today. One guy come up and Dick Stoner gave me a big hug, and he said, "You started me when I was a teenager, and he told me his name, and then I remember his name, but and he says I'm doing full-time shows now, and he's wanting to come to Fort Wayne and do a show, and
Good.
So,
Yep.
But yeah, it's nice to start some people on a career. I have a number of young people that are now in Vegas or different places that started out from me.
Were they students that you had taught, or
Well, a lot
just
of them
influenced?
I usually have magic classes necessarily, but person come in to buy the trick, I would help them with the trick and show them the ideas of it and how to do it.
Get them started.
And then they would come back and buy more magic and get interested in.
Does your fun shop actually teach magic classes or have?
I did it one time. In fact, through the colleges, I did a show for a while where I would have college students come in and they could
take a
learn
class,
some magic, and the college incorporated it and tried to advertise it. And so I did some of that for a while. But it's fun to help people find something that they really like to do. And
right. Have there ever, before we start to wrap up over here, have there been some major celebrities in your life that you had worked with or that you remember?
Oh, I worked with Ed Sullivan show, Johnny Carson show, the Statler Brothers show. There were a number of different things. And in the Nashville Network, I worked a lot with Dolly Parton and different entertainers like that were, and that you're identified with them, and then that makes you
on the same level as far as your clients. You want to hire somebody who has been in that strata, basically. So you were on the Ed Sullivan show, huh? How many times? One time, or
just one time?
And was that a comedy act that you were doing too, or was it a silent act?
It was comedy, doing comedy and the magic.
Okay. Stand up or close up?
Stand up.
Stand up kind of a thing? Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I know there have been a handful of magicians who've worked there from time to time, and I think Fred Capps was one who worked the same night the Beatles were there. Ed Sullivan. And for those who are listening who don't know Ed Sullivan, he was really influential, obviously, in people's careers. So once you're on there, it's something like with Johnny Carson, you were a made man. You could write your ticket pretty much any place because you were now a star. Was that difficult getting on Ed Sullivan's show?
Well, and I had an agent that booked me on it.
Oh, the agent did it for you?
Yeah.
And they just called you and said, they got this for you. Wow, that's great.
Well, the agent, that's from the TV thing, then you get the agent answers and finding you.
Right. I understand. Well, as we close, the name of my podcast is called The Magic Word Podcast. So I always like to close and ask some of my guests, what is it that's important to you? I mean, not necessarily a word. I don't mean like a magic word like abracadabra or something, but what is your philosophy of life? What do you live by? What's important to you?
Well, I enjoy making people laugh, and that's very satisfying. And if I can help them sell a product and get people laughing and entertained, that's a successful thing.
Yeah, it's a win-win. That's a good idea, yeah. If you actually get people to laugh and sell the product altogether. Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you, Dick. I appreciate you being my guest today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So for the Magic Word Podcast, that was Dick Stoner. This is Scotty out. Thank you, Dick. I appreciate you being my guest this week. I'm sure the listeners got a lot out of that. And if you, the listeners, by the way, would like to contact Dick, I know he would love to visit with you again if you ever get to Fort Wayne, Indiana, to see the shop. They've got a website at funnygoofycrap.com. Yeah, just like it sounds, funnygoofycrap.com. And if you want to make sure that Dick is going to be there, then you might want to send an email beforehand to goofycrap@stoners.com. That's funny. goofycrap@stoners.com. podcast.com. So you can let him know if you're going to be coming, if you want to ask a question, perhaps even about this episode or something else that has to do maybe with not just the magic shop, but also maybe about some of the history having to do with trade shows. I want to also suggest that you visit the website if you haven't done that here this week, and that's themagicwordpodcast.com to see the blog, because some of the photos that I published here this week, he had referred to directly. Like, for example, the funny glasses he has that has the 8 of hearts in the glasses, and then also that a trick where he unfolds the paper, or either folds it together and it goes from a casket to a garbage can. That's on there then as well. In fact, there's a video of him performing it, I believe, on our website here this week. So be sure to check that out then too. Visit the website. There's a lot of other good, important information there as well. Anyhow, thank you guys very much for coming back and listening this week. I want to remind everybody, if you have not yet signed up for the pod letter, we are reaching about 1,500 people who are subscribing to the pod letter then right now, and that way each week people can keep up with who's going to be here from week to week. And next week we've got another exciting guest that I know you don't want to miss. And we also will give you some suggestion from the archives. Like this week, we suggest you might want to go back and to listen to one of the podcast episodes we did with one of the other trade show magicians, like Paul Gertner, Seth Kramer, Shep Hyken, Anders Boulanger, several others that we had spoken to over the past few years. That kind of information is in the pod letter then as well. Well, anyhow, we need to keep this moving along, and I thank you again for coming back and joining me. Again, thank you for your thoughts and prayers, and never give up. Keep on going, and as John Rockenbaumer always says, onward. So, until next week, stay well, get booked, and remember that if you're working trade shows, remember to sell things as you make customers laugh. This is Scotty out.